So I'm taking a little break from building a 23rd century frigate to work on an 18th century frigate. This will be called HMS Dauntless. Here's the bow, and what I have featured here is a couple decks, the hold and the orlop deck, and the gun deck, of course, is just a skeleton so far. And it's coming along slowly but surely. So in this video, I'm going to show you the hold. And here we go. We're going to start aft at the stern and work our way forward. Note that throughout the hold, the floor is sort of this gray color, and that's because it's made up of broken rock called shingle. The bottom of the hold is lined with bars of iron to provide ballast, and then on top of that, broken rock called shingle, which provides more ballast, also draining for the storage, and also provides a level surface on which barrels can be set. In the aftmost portion, we have stairs going up to the orlop deck. This is the mizzen mast, and there's a little storage, nothing much going on here. Moving forward, we've got more storage. This is what the hold is all about, is storage. And in my little universe, they've got some fresh fruits and vegetables, so we can open these up. See, oh look, big crate of carrots. Of course, fresh fruits and vegetables aren't going to keep for very long. There's the pumpkin. Over here, by the way, check that guy out. That's the captain. Moving a little forward still, we have the main mast featured here, and surrounding it is casing so that it can be used to pump out bilge water. There's presumably a pump somewhere up on the gun deck or the weather deck. Here's stairs to get up to the next one up, which is orlop deck. And then these are shot lockers. So this aft shot locker holds a bunch of 24-pound solid balls of iron, which can be used by the 24-pounder cannons or guns on the gun deck. And then forward we'll have another locker. And well, it's empty now, but my plan is to fill this with 36-pound shot. Those are going to be 2x2 round bricks. Those will be fired from carronades, if I can figure out how to design them. The idea with the different sizes of shot is that the 24-pound cannonballs would be fired long range from the gun deck, and then these larger rounds would be fired from special cannons called carronades, which would be fired probably from the weather deck. And those are short-range cannons intended to do a lot of damage when ships are fighting very close quarters. Over here we have some wood storage for the ship's carpenter, so if the ship needs to be repaired, they can use that wood storage to do stuff. Over here is coal storage for the galley. Moving forward, we've got a bunch of barrels. I think maybe these barrels should be rotated like 90 degrees so that they're not rocking around when the ship rolls, but here they are. And they look pretty cool. Most of them probably contain water. And now we move to what is probably the coolest feature in the hold. This is the grand magazine. So on the back wall, the aft wall, we have a bunch of barrels of gunpowder. And limitations of Lego, these are a little bit too small, but what can you do? And these would be filled with about 90 pounds of gunpowder, and they would then dump the gunpowder out into this filling bin to fill up cartridges, which are these things. So these would be linen bags of gunpowder holding several pounds of gunpowder to use for the cannons. Note that the whole place is lined with, well, dark orange tiles. This is supposed to be like copper, and that's to prevent sparks. So everybody in here, there's no iron allowed, so you can't even wear shoes because your shoes might have iron nails in them. The copper plating in the grand magazine also prevented rats from getting in there and trailing gunpowder all over the ship like they would probably do. So this is where they would fill the gunpowder. Of course, you can't have a lantern in here either because you don't want a lantern, a flame in a room filled with gunpowder. So how do they get light down here in the hold? And to do that, they had a light room. So note these windows over here. And those windows connect to this light room where we would have lanterns there so that we can provide some illumination into the grand magazine. Also note that the Grand Magazine is entirely submerged under the waterline. Out here we have more copper plating. Here the copper plating is to prevent growth of barnacles and sea worms into the hull. So it's anti-fouling, basically. So the reason the Grand Magazine is entirely underneath the waterline is that it reduces the likelihood of a fire reaching this area and blowing up the entire ship. If the Grand Magazine catches on fire, then they'd better just evacuate and do it fast. Another thing to note about the Grand Magazine is that there is only one way in or out, which is through this ladder. So this ladder will open up into the gun room on the orlop deck, which is the deck above. And that's the one and only way to get down there. And it's sort of airlocked off to make sure that no open flames are going down into the Grand Magazine. Everybody's going down there barefoot or wearing some sort of slippers so they don't have iron nails in their shoes. No iron whatsoever in here because you don't want sparks. No open flame because you don't want fire in the Grand Magazine. We finally move to the forwardmost part of the hold. Here's the foremast, and over here we have treasure storage. I don't know if they'd store treasure in the forwardmost part of the hold, but it's Lego and I wanted to do it. Here's fine bottles of wine and spirits and things, and here's some of the beer storage. They probably had a lot more beer than just that because they needed to mix it with water to make it drinkable. And there's one more way to get down to the hold, which is this ladder, which is in that forwardmost area. That's how they get into the light room to light these lanterns. But there's only one way into that Grand Magazine. And so that's the hold. So the next deck will be the orlop deck, and that's going to come up in another video.